When I saw my husband scrolling through my phone, my heart skipped a beat, but not from the fear of being caught. It was because of what he would see. The messages. The ones I forgot to delete. I tried to grab the phone from his hand, but he skillfully pulled it back and kept reading. I watched his face change as he read each line, and I could feel my life crumbling in mere seconds. Yes, he was about to learn the truth. But not the whole truth. His hands were trembling as he turned the page, and I knew, now, he would get to the message that would destroy my life. That one, single message that would explain everything, or maybe, just maybe, confuse him even more. My phone suddenly buzzed in his hand, and a new notification popped up on the screen. I saw his face pale when he read the sender's name. My husband froze. He didn't even blink. I bit the inside of my cheek, an old habit when I'm nervous. My nerves mixed with the horrible realization of what I had done. His breath quickened. I could hear it, even from the 2 meters that separated us. This was exactly what I had feared the most. Because 3 months ago, I made a mistake that changed everything. And now, I had no idea what to do. But let me tell you how it all really happened. Before I share the secret I've been hiding for so long, leave a comment letting me know where you're watching this from and answer the question, have you ever had a secret you tried so hard to hide, but in the end, you just couldn't? I stood frozen in the doorway of our bedroom, staring at my husband's back as he sat on the edge of the bed, scrolling through my phone. His posture was stiff, and the familiar sound of his fingers swiping across the screen sent a chill down my spine. For a moment, I could barely breathe. I could feel my heart racing in my chest as my thoughts scrambled for a way to stop him from discovering what I had kept hidden for months. I had always prided myself on being a woman who didn't lie, a woman who held integrity in her relationships. But the truth? The truth felt like a weight, a crushing burden that I could no longer bear. My heart clenched as I watched him, unaware of the storm that was about to hit. He had no idea what he was holding in his hands. The past few months had felt like I was walking through a fog. My life, my marriage, had been so predictable, so mundane. I had longed for something different, something exciting, something to make me feel alive again. But somewhere along the way, I had forgotten how to be me. I had lost touch with the woman I once was, the passionate, vibrant person who had been full of dreams and desires. And then, he entered my life. It started so innocently. A colleague at work, a friendly smile, a few exchanged words in the break room. I never meant for it to go this far. But one conversation led to another, and before I knew it, we were sharing more than just professional pleasantries. We were sharing parts of ourselves that I hadn't realized I had been starving for. It didn't take long before the glances between us turned into something more, something unspoken, but understood. I began to notice how my body reacted when he was near. How my pulse quickened, how my breath hitched. The excitement, the adrenaline, it was intoxicating. For the first time in years, I felt wanted. I felt seen. But it wasn't just about the physical attraction. It was the connection, the way he listened to me, the way he understood things about me that I had forgotten how to say. He didn't ask for anything, didn't demand anything. He just was there. And that presence, that attention, it pulled me in like gravity. I remember the first time we crossed the line. It was a work event, a company dinner. I was sitting at the table, laughing along with the others, but my mind was elsewhere. His presence next to me was magnetic. I could feel him just behind me, the faintest touch of his hand on my shoulder, the heat of his body so close to mine. It felt electric. And in that moment, when I turned to look at him, our eyes met, and everything else faded into the background. I don't remember who moved first. I just remember that it felt like time stood still. Our lips met in a kiss that was soft, tentative at first, but then it deepened. And in that instant, everything that had been missing in my life was there. It was thrilling, dangerous, and completely wrong. But I couldn't stop. We couldn't stop. I pulled away, my breath coming in quick gasps, and I saw the same confusion in his eyes that mirrored what I was feeling. We both knew this was crossing a line, but in that moment, neither of us cared. The world outside the room ceased to exist, and all that mattered was the electricity between us, the pull that neither of us had the strength to fight. It wasn't supposed to happen this way. It wasn't supposed to go this far. But it did. For weeks, we carried on in silence, our secret simmering just beneath the surface. I found myself looking forward to every moment we shared, even if it was only a few stolen minutes in the office or a brief exchange in the hallway. Every touch, every glance, felt like an invitation to something forbidden, something we couldn't walk away from. And yet, despite everything, I still found myself at home, with my husband. I still wore the mask, pretending that everything was fine, pretending that nothing had changed. But it had. I had changed. I tried to tell myself it was just a fling, just a brief moment of excitement, something to fill the void in my life. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. I knew I had stepped into something that I couldn't control. The guilt gnawed at me, a constant presence in the back of my mind. How could I do this to him? How could I betray the man I had once loved? The man who had given me a home, a family, a life? And yet, here I was, unable to stop. But the hardest part wasn't the affair itself. It wasn't the stolen kisses or the secret meetings. It was the constant fear that one day, one of us would slip, and everything would come crashing down. That day came sooner than I expected. I stood in the doorway, frozen, as I watched my husband scroll through my phone. He didn't notice me at first, absorbed in whatever he was reading. I had been careless. My heart was pounding in my chest, the anxiety threatening to choke me. I couldn't breathe. My mouth felt dry as I took a step forward, each movement slow and deliberate. It was like watching a train crash in slow motion. I wanted to scream, to run, to stop him, but my body wouldn't move. It was as if time had slowed down, and all I could do was watch. His fingers paused over a message on the screen, and I knew it was the one. The one I had hoped he would never find. The one that would expose everything. I wanted to reach out and grab the phone, to delete it, to erase the proof. But I couldn't. I was too late. The silence in the room was deafening. My heart was thudding in my ears, and I could see the muscles in his jaw tighten as he read. I stood there, paralyzed, waiting for the inevitable. His eyes flicked up to mine, and I saw the hurt in them, the confusion. He knew. And in that moment, I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. I stood there, frozen in place, my feet glued to the floor as I watched my husband slowly lower the phone. His eyes never left the screen, and the silence in the room was almost unbearable. The tension between us thickened with every second that passed. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I could only watch, my heart pounding in my chest like a drumbeat, as he took in everything I had tried so hard to hide. Is this what's been going on? His voice was quiet, but the weight of the question hit me like a slap. It wasn't anger, not yet. Just disbelief. His tone was cold, calculating, and I knew he was trying to process what he had just discovered. I felt the pit in my stomach deepen, and I fought the urge to apologize, to beg for forgiveness, but I knew it wouldn't matter. The damage was done. I wanted to speak, to explain, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I stared at him, waiting for him to say something more, anything more. But there was nothing. He simply looked at me, his expression unreadable. I had no idea what he was thinking, and that terrified me. It was like he was a stranger to me, someone I had never met before. His hand trembled slightly as he put the phone down on the bed, and I could see his chest rise and fall with each breath, a visible sign of the turmoil inside him. This wasn't the man I had known for so many years. This was someone different, someone who had been hurt deeply by the woman he had trusted with his life. And that was something I couldn't undo. I can explain, I finally managed to whisper, but the words felt hollow in my mouth, as though I were speaking to someone else, not my husband. He didn't respond. He didn't need to. His silence said everything. He stood up slowly, his movements stiff and deliberate. I instinctively took a step back, feeling like a trespasser in my own home. The space between us grew, physically and emotionally, and I couldn't stop myself from feeling the distance, the coldness, that now separated us. "I don't know what you want me to say," he said quietly, almost as if he were talking to himself. "I don't know if I can even look at you right now." His words cut through me like a knife. There was no accusation, no anger, just the weight of his disappointment, and that was far worse than any outburst he could have had. I could see it in his eyes, the look of a man who had lost something precious, something he would never get back. "I never meant for this to happen," I said, my voice shaky, but it felt like a feeble excuse. The truth was, it didn't matter what I meant. It didn't matter how much I regretted it. What mattered now was the damage I had caused. The betrayal that was now written on my husband's face. He turned away from me, and I could feel the finality of the gesture in my bones. I had lost him. There was no turning back now. Whatever we had, whatever we'd built together over the years, was gone. And it was my fault. "I don't know if I can forgive you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he clenched his fists at his sides, as though fighting back the urge to lash out. But he didn't. He didn't scream, didn't shout. He just stood there, a man broken by the woman he had loved. And I didn't know how to fix it. "Please," I whispered, stepping forward. "I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted this." He didn't look at me. He didn't move. The words hung in the air between us, unanswered, unheard. And in that moment, I realized that nothing I could say would change what had happened. I had crossed a line, and I couldn't take it back. I had destroyed everything. I watched him leave the room, his footsteps heavy on the wooden floor. The door closed behind him with a soft thud, and the silence that followed was deafening. I sank down onto the edge of the bed, my hands shaking as I tried to collect myself. Tears filled my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. I didn't deserve to cry. Not after what I had done. The pain was suffocating. It was like I was drowning in my own regret, my own guilt. I had pushed away the one person who had always been there for me, the person who had loved me without question, and for what? A fleeting moment of excitement, a brief escape from a life I had grown too comfortable in. I closed my eyes, trying to calm my breathing, but the images flooded back, my husband's face, his hurt, his disbelief. I had never seen him like that before, and it broke something inside me. I had always thought I knew what I wanted, that I could control my desires. But I had been wrong. I had never felt more lost in my entire life. And then, in the midst of my guilt and sorrow, I thought of him, my colleague, the one who had set all of this in motion. The one who had made me feel something again. I hated myself for it, for the way I had allowed myself to be pulled into this web of lies and deceit. But I couldn't help it. I couldn't ignore the way he made me feel, the way he had filled the emptiness inside me when I felt invisible. But now, standing in the wreckage of my life, I knew the truth. I had lost everything. And I was alone. I reached for the phone on the bed, the device that had been the catalyst for all of this. My hands were still trembling as I picked it up, but I couldn't bring myself to look at the messages again. I already knew what they said. I already knew the damage I had caused. And yet, as I scrolled through the screen, I couldn't stop myself from feeling the weight of it all. The messages, the photos, the words that had once seemed so innocent, now felt like a betrayal. And I was left to pick up the pieces of a life I had shattered, a life that would never be the same again. I woke up in the same bed I had shared with him for years, but everything felt different. The sunlight crept through the curtains, casting a warm, golden glow across the room. But instead of the familiar sense of comfort I usually felt in the mornings, all I could feel was an overwhelming weight pressing down on my chest. The air felt thick, suffocating, and it was hard to catch my breath. The events of last night rushed back to me, and I could feel my heart ache all over again. My husband had seen the messages. He had seen everything. The silence that followed had been the worst part. The lack of anger, the lack of shouting, it was as if he had given up on me entirely. And that thought alone made me feel smaller than I'd ever felt in my entire life. I sat up, my feet touching the cold floor, but I didn't stand. I couldn't. I could hear him moving around the house, but I couldn't bring myself to face him yet. The weight of his disappointment, the hurt in his eyes, it haunted me. I hadn't just betrayed his trust. I had torn apart everything we had built. Everything that had once been sacred between us now felt like dust, scattered in the wind. I had been fooling myself. The affair, the excitement, the thrill of doing something forbidden, it had all seemed so harmless at the time. I told myself it was just an escape, a moment of weakness. But now, as I sat there, looking at the empty space beside me in bed, I realized that I hadn't just made a mistake, I had made a choice. A choice that had irrevocably altered the course of my life. I stood up slowly, the gravity of my situation settling in. I could no longer avoid the reality. I had to face it, face him. But I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to see the man who had once been my everything, now reduced to nothing more than a stranger. I walked to the bathroom, trying to shake off the feeling of dread that clung to me. I looked at myself in the mirror, at the reflection of the woman who had made so many mistakes. My hair was disheveled, my eyes tired and red from crying. I barely recognized the person staring back at me. It was as if I had lost a part of myself in this mess. The woman who had been so sure of her life, of her choices, was gone, replaced by someone who had no idea how to fix the destruction she had caused. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself, but my hands were shaking. I didn't know how to make this right. I didn't know how to fix what I had broken. I thought about calling him, apologizing, begging him to understand, but I knew it was too late for apologies. The damage had been done, and nothing I said could undo it. I closed my eyes, leaning against the bathroom sink, trying to gather my thoughts. What was I supposed to do now? How could I face him? How could I face myself? The guilt was suffocating, and every second I stayed in this house, it felt like the walls were closing in on me. I had built this life, this home, with him, and now I was watching it crumble. And for what? A fleeting moment of excitement? A taste of freedom? It wasn't worth it. None of it was. I heard him downstairs, moving around in the kitchen. I could hear the clink of dishes, the sound of him preparing breakfast like he always did. It was so normal, so mundane. And yet, everything had changed. Everything felt foreign now. The way he moved, the way he breathed, it was all different. He wasn't the man I had known, and I wasn't the woman I used to be. I walked downstairs slowly, my steps tentative, as if I were walking into an unknown world. I knew he heard me coming. He didn't turn around when I entered the kitchen, and for a moment I stood there, unsure of what to do or say. The silence between us was unbearable. I reached for the coffee pot, pouring myself a cup, though I wasn't sure if I could stomach it. My hands were still trembling, and I could feel the weight of his gaze on me. He wasn't angry. No, there was no anger in him. Only sadness. and that was worse than any anger could have been. Finally, he spoke, his voice low, almost mechanical. "I don't know what to say to you." I didn't know what to say either. What could I say? How could I explain myself? How could I justify what I had done? I was beyond justification. "I'm sorry," I whispered, the words feeling hollow and inadequate. I wanted to say more, but I didn't know what. I wanted to make it right, but I didn't know how. "I never meant to hurt you." He turned then, his face impassive, his eyes hard. I could see the strain in his features, the way he was holding everything together by sheer force of will. "But you did," he said quietly. "You hurt me. You betrayed me." His words cut through me, and I felt tears well up in my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. I couldn't. I didn't deserve to cry. I had no right to cry after what I had done. "I never wanted this," I said, my voice shaking. "I never wanted to hurt you. I just didn't know what I was doing." The truth of that hit me like a punch to the gut. I hadn't known what I was doing. I hadn't known how deep the hole I was digging would go. I had thought I was just looking for something, anything, to fill the emptiness I had been feeling. But now, as I stood here, facing him, I realized how badly I had miscalculated. "I thought I could make it through without feeling anything," I whispered, more to myself than to him. "I thought it was just a moment. I didn't realize how much it would hurt." He didn't say anything. He just stood there, looking at me with a kind of resignation that felt like a slap in the face. And in that silence, I knew that whatever we had once shared, whatever connection we had, was gone. It had been replaced by a cold, painful reality. "I can't forgive you right now," he said finally, his voice strained. "I don't know if I ever will." I nodded, feeling the truth of his words cut deep. There was no way back. Not for me. Not for us. And in that moment, I understood. I had lost everything, and there was nothing I could do to change it. I had spent the entire morning running through every possible scenario in my head, playing out conversations, apologies, and explanations that would somehow bring us back to a place of understanding. But nothing felt real. Every thought felt like a rehearsal for a play I would never perform. There was no way to make things right. No way to undo what I had done. As the afternoon slipped away, I found myself staring out the window, watching the world go by, but it felt like I was watching it through a fog. I was detached, distant, unable to engage with anything around me. I hadn't spoken much since our conversation this morning. He had left to go to work, and I had stayed behind, trying to sort through my emotions, trying to figure out how I had ended up here. I hadn't meant for any of this to happen. The affair had started so innocently, so harmlessly. But somewhere along the way, I had let my desires take control. I had allowed myself to fall into a fantasy of escape, of something more exciting than the monotony of my life. But now, standing in the ruins of my marriage, I realized that nothing had been worth the cost. I glanced at the phone on the table, the same one that had been the catalyst for everything. I had kept it close, even though I knew it was the source of all the pain I was feeling. I had hoped, foolishly, that I could somehow erase everything, that if I deleted the messages, erased the evidence, I could wipe away the consequences. But I knew that was impossible. It wasn't just the messages that had been exposed. It was everything I had been hiding from myself. I picked up the phone, and as I unlocked it, I saw the messages again. The words jumped out at me, each one a reminder of my betrayal. The exchanges with him, the secret plans, the excitement in his words, the way he had made me feel alive again, if only for a moment. I had thought that was all I needed. I had convinced myself that it was harmless. But now, staring at the screen, I could see the destruction in every word. It was never harmless. It was never just about a few stolen moments of pleasure. It was about the breaking of trust, the tearing apart of something that had once been sacred. I dropped the phone onto the table, the weight of it heavy in my hands. I couldn't keep pretending that this wasn't happening, that everything was fine. I couldn't deny what I had done anymore. The doorbell rang, pulling me out of my thoughts. My heart skipped a beat as I stood there, frozen for a moment, before making my way toward the door. It was him. I knew it before I even looked through the peephole. He had come back early. He was probably here to talk, to confront me again, but I wasn't ready. I didn't know how to face him. I didn't know how to face myself. I opened the door, and there he was, standing on the other side. His face was unreadable, but I could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the weight of everything he was carrying. The tension between us was palpable, and I could feel it in the air, thick and suffocating. He didn't say anything at first, just stood there, looking at me as if he were trying to figure out what to say. I felt the same way. I wanted to reach out to him, to tell him how sorry I was, how much I regretted everything. But the words felt stuck in my throat. They were meaningless, hollow. Nothing I could say would undo the hurt I had caused him. I came to get my things, he said finally, his voice calm but distant. I don't think I can stay here anymore. I nodded, unable to speak. The truth was, I hadn't expected him to stay. I hadn't expected anything. Not after what I had done. I had broken his trust, shattered the foundation of our relationship, and now I was facing the consequences. He walked past me into the house, his footsteps heavy on the floor. I followed him, feeling the weight of his every movement. It was like I was watching someone else, not the man I had shared my life with for so many years. He was a stranger now, someone I had hurt beyond repair. I couldn't bring myself to look at him directly as he gathered his things, packing up the life we had built together. He didn't speak much, only the occasional murmur as he sorted through his belongings, picking up his clothes, his books, the small things that had once felt like a part of home. I stood in the doorway of the bedroom, watching him silently, and for the first time, I realized just how much I had taken for granted. All the little things, the quiet moments, the way he had always been there for me. I had let it slip away without even realizing it. And now, as I watched him pack his things, I knew that everything was gone. He finished, zipping up his suitcase, and turned to face me. His eyes were cold now, distant. He was no longer the man I had once known. He was someone else, someone I had created with my own hands. I hope you find what you're looking for, he said, his voice low but firm. I hope you figure out what you really want, because I'm not it. I can't be part of this anymore. I wanted to apologize again, to beg him to stay, but I didn't. I knew it wouldn't change anything. He had already made up his mind. And deep down, I knew he was right. He couldn't stay with me. Not after everything that had happened. Not after the damage I had done. Goodbye, he said, his eyes never leaving mine as he walked past me, heading toward the door. I didn't say anything. I didn't even move. I just watched him leave. The sound of the door closing behind him felt like the final nail in the coffin of our relationship. It was over. There was no going back. I stood there in the silence, the emptiness of the house pressing down on me. I was alone now, completely and utterly alone. I had made my choice, and now I was facing the consequences. But even though I had lost everything, even though I had destroyed my marriage, there was something inside me that still felt like I was just beginning to understand who I was. And maybe, just maybe, that was the only thing left worth finding. The days that followed were suffocating. The house, once a place of warmth and comfort, now felt like a cold, barren shell. Every room, every corner seemed to echo with the absence of him. I tried to keep myself busy, filling my days with meaningless tasks that didn't matter. I cleaned, organized, tried to cook, but everything felt hollow. It was as if the rhythm of my life had been shattered, and I couldn't find a way to put the pieces back together. I'd spend hours staring out the window, watching people go about their lives as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. Everything had been taken from me in one simple, irreversible moment. And no matter how much I tried to deny it, I couldn't escape the reality of what I had done. I had betrayed him. And I couldn't undo it. I could feel it in the silence, in the way my thoughts spiraled around the same painful truth. I had lost him, and I wasn't sure how to even begin to fix myself. I kept replaying that moment over and over in my head, the moment he had stood there, the phone in his hand, looking at me with those eyes. Eyes that had once looked at me with love, with trust, now filled with hurt and disbelief. I could still hear his words echoing in my ears. Asterisk, I don't know if I can forgive you. Asterisk, those words cut through me every time I thought of them. I had never imagined hearing them from him. But I had earned them. I had earned all the pain, all the loss. The guilt gnawed at me constantly. It was like a heavy weight in my chest, making it hard to breathe. I tried to convince myself that I wasn't a bad person, that mistakes were part of being human, but the truth was undeniable. I had betrayed someone who had trusted me with everything. And now, I was alone. And I deserved it. I spent the first few days in a haze, barely able to function. I would go through the motions, pretending like I was okay, but inside, I felt like I was falling apart. Every time I reached for my phone, I felt the guilt of the messages I had exchanged, the lies I had told, the truth I had hidden. I had erased everything, deleted the evidence, but the memory of it lingered. It lingered in the way I looked at myself in the mirror and didn't recognize the woman staring back. The woman who had made choices that had destroyed everything she cared about. One evening, after a long day of pretending, I found myself sitting alone in the living room, staring at the empty space where he had once sat. The room felt too big now, too empty. I thought about calling him, about apologizing, about begging him to come back. But I knew it was useless. He was gone. I had pushed him away, and now there was no way to get him back. The silence was suffocating. I tried to focus on the sound of my breathing, the hum of the refrigerator in the background, anything to break the stillness. But there was nothing. The silence just pressed in harder. And I realized, with a cold shock, that I had never truly been alone before. I had always had him, his presence, his love, his constant reassurance. But now, I was truly alone. And it hurt in a way I couldn't put into words. The phone on the coffee table buzzed, and my heart skipped a beat. It was a message from him. My breath caught in my throat as I stared at the screen, not knowing whether to read it or not. I hadn't heard from him since he left. The silence from his end was just as suffocating as the silence I was living in. I told myself that I wasn't going to open it. I told myself that it wouldn't matter. But my fingers moved on their own, unlocking the screen, and I saw the words that he had sent. I can't do this anymore. I need space. I don't know if I want to come back, but I need time to think. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I knew it was coming, but seeing it written out, seeing him make that decision so definitively, broke me all over again. He was right to need space. I had given him no other choice. I had broken the trust between us, and now, there was nothing left but the aftermath. I set the phone down, my hands trembling. I felt a cold sweat break out on the back of my neck as I sat there in the silence, the weight of his words sinking into my chest. I had ruined everything. And now, he was gone. The realization hit me harder than any slap, harder than anything else. I had lost him. I thought back to when we first met, how we had been so in love, so sure of each other. We had built a life together, one that had felt unbreakable. But somewhere along the way, we had drifted. Somewhere in the monotony of our everyday lives, I had started to feel something was missing, something that wasn't his fault but my own. I had wanted more, and I had looked for it in the wrong place. And now, everything I had ever known was slipping through my fingers. I thought about the affair, about how it had started so innocently. How he had made me feel seen again. How he had been a brief moment of light in a life that had grown dim. But that light hadn't been real. It had been a temporary escape from the reality I was too afraid to face. It had been a mistake. A selfish, terrible mistake. I could feel the tears welling up in my eyes, but I couldn't bring myself to cry. I had no right to. I had no right to feel sorry for myself. I had made this bed, and now I had to lie in it. I stood up, wiping my face with the back of my hand, trying to gather the strength to face the truth. The truth was that I had hurt him. The truth was that he wasn't coming back. And the truth was that I had no idea how to move forward. The life I had built, the life I thought was mine, was gone. And now, all I had left was this empty house, this silence, and the weight of my own mistakes. I took a deep breath, my chest tight with emotion. The pain was sharp, but it was also a reminder. A reminder of what I had lost, and a reminder of what I had to do to move forward. But that journey felt impossible. How could I move forward when everything I had ever known had fallen apart? But as the day wore on, and I sat in the silence, I realized that I didn't have a choice. I couldn't live in the past forever. I couldn't keep blaming myself. I had to find a way to make peace with what I had done. I had to learn to forgive myself. And maybe, just maybe, that was the first step in healing. The days after he left dragged on like an endless, painful blur. Each morning felt like a weight pressing down on my chest, a reminder of everything I had lost. I would wake up in the same bed, feeling the emptiness beside me where he used to lie, and I would lie there, staring at the ceiling, unable to muster the energy to get up. My world had been turned upside down, and I was left to pick up the pieces, but the truth was, I didn't know how to. I had spent so many years building this life, this home, with him. We had shared so much, laughed together, cried together, and now, all of it seemed like a distant memory. The man I had spent my life with, the one I had promised to love and cherish, was now a stranger to me, and I was a stranger to myself. The phone sat on the kitchen counter, silent. I had made the decision not to call him, not to text him. He needed space, and I had to respect that, even though every fiber of my being screamed at me to reach out, to fix things, to make it right. But I knew it wouldn't work. I knew that no matter how much I begged or apologized, it would never be the same again. I had broken something that could never be repaired. But that didn't stop the aching void inside me from growing larger. I had always been so sure of myself, so confident in the life I had built. But now, all I could feel was doubt and regret. I thought about the affair, about how it had started innocently enough, but how quickly it had escalated, how quickly I had allowed myself to get lost in something that wasn't real. I had betrayed not just him, but myself. And I wasn't sure if I could ever forgive myself for that. I spent hours walking around the house, trying to fill the silence, but nothing seemed to work. I would clean, I would cook, but the tasks felt meaningless. Everything felt meaningless. It was as if the house itself was empty, just a shell, a reminder of everything that was now gone. I couldn't even find the energy to do the things I used to enjoy. The things that had once brought me comfort, reading, cooking, even going for walks, no longer held any joy. They felt hollow, like everything else. I went through the motions of everyday life, but my mind was elsewhere, constantly drifting back to him. I would think about what he was doing, where he was, if he was thinking about me at all. But then the guilt would hit again, and I would remind myself that I had no right to expect anything from him. He had every right to be angry, to need space. I had crossed a line that I could never uncross, and the consequences of that were mine to bear. One afternoon, as I sat in the living room, I felt a sudden wave of panic. I hadn't heard from him. Not a call, not a message, nothing. It had been days. Weeks. And the silence was suffocating. I felt a desperate need to reach out, to do something, anything, to fix what I had broken, but I couldn't bring myself to pick up the phone. The thought of seeing him again, of facing him after everything that had happened, was terrifying. What would I say? What could I possibly say to make him understand? To make him forgive me? I couldn't find the words, couldn't find the strength to face him. The fear of his rejection, of his anger, of his disappointment, was overwhelming. I had hurt him in a way I couldn't even begin to comprehend, and I didn't know how to fix it. Days turned into weeks, and still, there was no word from him. I had to accept that he wasn't coming back. And that thought hit me like a punch in the gut every time it crossed my mind. It wasn't just the loss of the man I had loved. It was the loss of everything we had built together. The life we had shared, the memories we had created, were all gone, wiped away in a single moment of weakness. I had destroyed it all. I spent countless hours thinking about him, about how we had met, about the years we had spent together. I thought about how we had laughed and dreamed and built a life full of love. And then I thought about the affair, and how it had all come crashing down. How I had betrayed him, betrayed everything we had. And I couldn't stop myself from feeling sick with regret. There were days when I felt like I couldn't breathe. I would stand in front of the mirror, looking at the woman who had made such a mess of her life, and wonder how I had ended up here. How had I become someone I didn't recognize? Someone capable of such betrayal? I had always thought of myself as a good person, someone who would never hurt anyone, especially not the people I loved. But I had hurt him. I had hurt us. And I couldn't undo it. I tried to keep busy, tried to move forward, but it was impossible. The memories of him were everywhere. The kitchen where we had spent so many nights cooking dinner together. The living room where we had curled up on the couch, watching movies and talking about everything and nothing. The bedroom where we had shared our most intimate moments. Everywhere I looked, I saw reminders of what I had lost. And then, one evening, as I was going through the motions of cleaning, my phone buzzed. A message. My heart stopped. It was from him. I stared at the screen for what felt like an eternity before I finally clicked it open. My breath caught in my throat as I read his words. I've been thinking a lot about everything. I don't know what to do, but I think it's time we talk. I'm not sure where we go from here, but I can't keep pretending that nothing happened. I sat there, the phone in my hand, my mind racing. What did this mean? Was he ready to talk? Did this mean there was still a chance? Or was this just another step toward the end? I didn't know. I didn't know what to do, what to say. But I knew one thing, I couldn't keep running from this. I couldn't keep pretending like everything was fine when it was broken beyond repair. I had to face him. I had to face what I had done. And so, with trembling hands, I typed a response. I'm ready. We need to talk. I'm so sorry. For everything. I hit send and sat there, waiting. Waiting for something, anything. But all I could feel was the cold, empty silence. I sat in the dimly lit living room, staring at the screen of my phone, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. The message was already sent, my apology, my invitation to talk. But as the minutes ticked by, I felt the anxiety grow, knotting in my stomach. What if he didn't respond? What if he had already made up his mind to move on? The uncertainty was maddening, and I couldn't shake the feeling that my entire future hung on the reply that had yet to come. I thought back to that morning when he had left. The way he had packed his things, his words cutting deeper than I had ever expected. Asterisk, I can't forgive you. Asterisk, those words had echoed in my mind ever since. I had never imagined he would say them, at least not so decisively. But now, as I sat there, with the empty house pressing in on me, I realized just how much I had underestimated the weight of my actions. The silence was deafening. I could hear the ticking of the clock on the wall, the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, and yet, nothing felt like it belonged. The sound of my own breath was louder than it should have been, like a reminder of how alone I was in this house that used to feel like home. I had been a fool, hadn't I? There was no way to sugarcoat what I had done. There was no way to explain it away. It wasn't just one moment of weakness, it was a betrayal that had unfolded over time, a series of choices that had led me to this point. And now I had to face the consequences. I glanced at the phone again, willing it to buzz, to light up with his name. But there was nothing. My heart dropped, and I felt a pang of fear wash over me. Was this it? Had I already lost him for good? Just as I was about to let my thoughts spiral into a darker place, my phone buzzed. My breath caught in my throat as I saw his name flash on the screen. For a moment, I just stared at it, unable to make myself open the message. My heart was pounding in my chest, my palms sweating. I had no idea what he would say, but I knew that whatever it was, it would change everything. Finally, with a shaky hand, I opened the message. I'm coming by tonight. We need to talk. The words hit me like a wave, washing over me with a mixture of relief and dread. He was coming. He was willing to talk. But what did that mean? Was this the beginning of some kind of reconciliation, or was this just the final conversation before we went our separate ways forever? I set the phone down on the table, my hands trembling. I didn't know how to prepare for this. What would I even say? How could I make him see that I was sorry, that I regretted everything? Would he even believe me? Would I believe me? I stood up and began pacing around the room, my mind racing with possibilities. I could hear his voice in my head, calm and distant, the way it had been that morning when he had told me he couldn't forgive me. I had seen the hurt in his eyes, the disappointment, but I also saw something else, a part of him that was shutting down, closing off from me. It was the part of him that I had killed with my actions. And now, here I was, trying to figure out how to revive it, how to bring us back from the brink. I ran my hands through my hair, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on me. I wanted to scream, to cry, but the tears wouldn't come. They had already come earlier, when I had realized the extent of what I had done. Now, it was time for something else. It was time to face the music. I had to be honest with him. I had to tell him everything. The affair, the reasons behind it, my regrets, my shame. I couldn't hide anymore. I had to face the truth, no matter how painful it was. I couldn't keep pretending that everything would be okay. The only way forward was through the truth. The clock on the wall ticked louder, and I could feel the minutes slipping away, each one bringing him closer to the door. What would he say when he saw me? Would he be angry? Would he be disappointed? Or would he be indifferent, just as tired of the whole situation as I was? I took a deep breath and sat down on the couch, trying to calm my thoughts. I needed to be prepared for whatever came next. He was coming here tonight. And I had to be ready. The doorbell rang suddenly, snapping me out of my thoughts. My heart leaped in my chest, and I felt a surge of adrenaline flood my body. This was it. The moment of truth. I stood up quickly, my knees weak beneath me, and walked to the door. I opened it slowly, almost hesitantly, and there he was. He looked the same, yet so different. His face was a little harder, the lines around his eyes more pronounced. He had aged in these past few weeks, and I couldn't help but feel responsible for that. He stood there for a moment, just looking at me, and I felt a flood of emotions wash over me. I wanted to run to him, to beg for forgiveness, but I knew I couldn't do that. I had to let him take the lead this time. I had to let him decide what came next. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice steady but strained. I nodded, stepping aside to let him in. The space between us felt impossibly wide, even though we were in the same room. It was like we were two strangers, standing on opposite ends of a chasm we had created together. I didn't know how to cross it, and I didn't know if he wanted to anymore. He walked into the living room, and I followed, taking a seat across from him. The silence that settled between us was thick, heavy with everything unsaid. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. The truth was right there, sitting in my throat, but it felt impossible to speak. "Why?" he finally asked, his eyes locking onto mine. The single word hung in the air, carrying so much weight. I could see the pain in his eyes, the confusion, the heartache. And I realized that he was looking for an answer that I didn't have. "I don't know," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "I don't know why. But I wish I could take it all back. I wish I could change everything." He nodded slowly, his gaze never leaving mine. The pain in his eyes was still there, but there was something else too, something like resignation. He had already accepted that this was his reality now, that this was what our relationship had become. "I don't know if I can forgive you," he said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. "I don't know if I can ever look at you the same way again." His words hit me like a hammer, but they were the truth. He had every right to feel that way. I had done this to us. I had broken the trust that had held us together, and now I had to live with the consequences. "I understand," I said, my voice shaking. "I don't expect you to forgive me. But I need you to know that I am truly sorry. I regret everything. I wish I could take it all back, but I can't. I can't change what I've done." We sat in silence for what felt like hours, both of us lost in our thoughts. The room was heavy with unspoken words, with all the things we were too afraid to say. I knew this wasn't the end, that there was more to come. But for now, we were here. And for the first time in weeks, I felt like I was finally facing the truth. It was almost midnight when the silence in the house became unbearable. I hadn't slept, nor had I eaten much all day. The day had dragged on in a haze of emotions, a blur of conversations and painful realizations. My mind was consumed with the thought of him, of what he had said earlier, of what had happened between us. I kept replaying our words in my head, wishing there was something I could have said differently, something I could have done to make things better. But I knew deep down that nothing would change the past. I had to accept that. We both had to. I sat on the couch, staring at the TV that wasn't even on, just the flickering light of the screen reflecting in the darkness. The emptiness around me was suffocating, as though the house had somehow absorbed the weight of everything that had transpired. I could feel the air getting thicker with every passing moment. The space I had once shared with him, our home, our memories, our life, was now just a cold shell of what it used to be. I kept thinking about the man I had married, the one who had been by my side for so many years. What had happened to him? What had happened to us? We had started off so strong, so certain of each other. But somewhere along the way, we had drifted. We had both changed, and I had lost sight of the things that mattered most. I had been so focused on the excitement, the thrill of the affair, that I had forgotten everything I had built. I had neglected him, neglected us, in the pursuit of something I couldn't even define. The reality was, I didn't know what I was looking for. I thought I could fill the emptiness with something temporary, but it had only made the void inside me grow wider. I thought about him, the one I had betrayed. I had hurt him in ways that words could never fully capture. I had taken away his trust, his love, and I had replaced it with guilt and shame. And for what? For a fleeting moment of excitement? For the false promise of something more? It wasn't worth it. None of it was worth losing him. The doorbell rang, and I jolted upright. I hadn't been expecting anyone, but my heart skipped a beat nonetheless. I stood there for a moment, frozen, unsure of whether I wanted to answer it. The uncertainty of the situation hung heavy in the air. I had been waiting for him, for the moment when he would come back, but I wasn't ready. I didn't know if I ever would be. I took a deep breath and walked slowly to the door, my footsteps tentative, as though each one could be the wrong move. When I opened it, I wasn't sure what I expected to see. But there he was, standing on the other side, looking at me with an unreadable expression on his face. He was here. The moment I had been dreading, the moment I had been waiting for, had finally arrived. He didn't say anything right away. He just stood there, staring at me, as if trying to decide whether or not to speak. I felt every nerve in my body tense. I wanted to say something, to explain, but I knew there were no words that could make things right. I had said it all before, and still, it didn't seem like enough. "I came to get my things," he finally said, his voice low, almost strained. The words felt like a punch to my gut. I had been expecting this, but hearing him say it out loud made it feel real. He wasn't just leaving, he was closing the door on everything we had built. I nodded, stepping aside to let him in. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I could feel the tears threatening to come, but I swallowed them back. I had no right to cry. I had no right to feel sorry for myself after everything I had done. He walked into the living room, his movements stiff, as though each step was weighed down by the pain he was carrying. I followed him, but I couldn't bring myself to stand too close. The space between us felt too vast, too final. There was nothing left to say that hadn't already been said. He started gathering his things, his clothes, his books, the small things that had once felt so important to both of us. I watched him, unable to move, unable to speak. I wanted to help, but I knew that wasn't my place anymore. I had no right to interfere in this process. I had no right to ask for anything from him. When he was almost done, he turned to face me. His expression had softened slightly, but there was still a distance between us, one that I knew couldn't be crossed. "I'm sorry," I whispered, the words feeling weak, but they were all I could manage. I wanted to say more, to tell him how much I regretted everything, but I didn't know if it would matter. How could it? He didn't respond at first, his gaze searching my face, as if looking for something. Maybe for sincerity. Maybe for remorse. Maybe for something that would prove to him that I was truly sorry. But I couldn't give him that. I couldn't give him anything that would take away the pain I had caused him. "I don't know if I can forgive you," he said softly, his voice full of quiet hurt. "I don't know if I ever will. You've changed everything. You've changed me." His words cut deeper than I had ever imagined. He had every right to feel that way. I had broken him, broken us. And now, here we were, standing in this cold, empty space, both of us trying to figure out where we went from here. But the truth was, there was no going back. I couldn't undo the damage I had done. "I understand," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect anything. But I need you to know. I'm sorry. I am so sorry for everything." He nodded slowly, his face unreadable. He turned to grab the last of his things, but before he left, he paused. He looked at me one last time, his eyes softening just a little. "I hope you find what you're looking for," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I hope you figure it out. Because I don't think I'm the answer anymore. And with that, he walked out the door. I stood there for a long time, staring at the empty space where he had been just moments before. The silence was deafening, and for the first time since all of this started, I felt the full weight of what I had done. He was gone. And this time, I wasn't sure if there was any way back. I closed the door behind me, my heart heavy with the weight of everything I had lost. The man I had loved was gone. And so was the woman I used to be. The days that followed his departure were filled with silence and emptiness. The house felt like a shell, a place I once called home but now seemed so foreign. Every room reminded me of what I had lost, of what I had destroyed. I couldn't escape the feeling that everything I had worked for, everything I had once cherished, was now slipping through my fingers like sand. I spent most of my days wandering from room to room, unable to settle anywhere. I would make tea, sit by the window, and stare out at the world going on as usual. Life outside continued as it always had, but inside, everything had come to a halt. The ticking of the clock on the wall felt like an incessant reminder of time I could never get back, of moments I had taken for granted. I tried to keep myself busy. I cleaned the house, organized things, did everything I could think of to distract myself from the crushing guilt that weighed down on me. But no matter how much I tried to fill the hours, my thoughts always returned to him. I thought about the way he looked at me when he left, the finality in his voice when he said he couldn't forgive me. I thought about the years we had spent together, the love we had shared, and how it all seemed so fragile now. It was like I was living in the ruins of a life I had destroyed with my own hands. There were times when I could still feel his presence in the house. His jacket hung on the back of the chair, his shoes by the door, his books scattered across the coffee table. It was as if he was still here, but I knew he wasn't. He had gone, and I had pushed him away. And now I was left to pick up the pieces of a life that no longer felt like mine. I hadn't heard from him since that day. No calls, no messages. The silence was deafening. I knew he needed space, and I had given it to him, but the waiting was becoming unbearable. It was as if the longer I waited, the more distant he became, like a memory fading into the past. I had no idea where we stood now, no idea if there was any chance for us to rebuild what we had. The thought of him moving on, of him finding happiness without me, made my stomach twist in knots. I wasn't sure what I wanted anymore. A part of me wanted him back, wanted things to go back to the way they were. But I knew that was impossible. The damage I had caused was too great. I had betrayed his trust, and no amount of apologies or regret would ever change that. Another part of me knew that I had to let go, that I couldn't keep holding on to something that was broken. But letting go felt like the hardest thing I had ever done. The truth was, I had been searching for something I couldn't quite define. I had felt empty, like something was missing in my life, and I thought I could find it in someone else. But now, I realized that I had been running away from my own unhappiness, from my own fears, and I had dragged him down with me. I had hurt him in ways that words couldn't express, and now, I had to face the consequences. The emptiness inside me was overwhelming, and I knew I couldn't fill it with distractions or excuses anymore. I had to confront the reality of what I had done. I had to face the truth, even if it meant accepting that I had lost him for good. I picked up my phone, staring at it for a long moment before I finally opened the message from him. It had been a few days since he'd sent it, but I hadn't had the courage to read it until now. My hands were shaking as I read his words, each one a reminder of how far we had fallen. "I've been thinking a lot," he had written. "I'm not sure if I can ever forgive you, but I'm willing to talk. Maybe we can figure this out, or maybe it's better if we just move on. But I need to hear from you." I read those words over and over, trying to make sense of them. There was a part of me that wanted to respond immediately, to beg him to come back, to tell him that I was sorry. But I knew I couldn't do that. I couldn't force him to forgive me. I had to give him the space he needed, just as I had promised. But still, the hope that he might be willing to talk, to give us a chance, made my heart race. I sat there for what felt like hours, the phone still in my hand, unsure of what to do next. I knew I had to make a decision. I had to decide whether I was ready to face him again, to face the consequences of my actions, or if I was going to let this end once and for all. Either way, I knew it wouldn't be easy. But I also knew that I couldn't keep living in this limbo. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was okay when I knew it wasn't. Finally, I put the phone down and stood up. I walked over to the window, looking out at the quiet street, the stillness of the world outside. It seemed so peaceful, so calm, and yet, my life felt anything but. I had ruined everything I had worked so hard to build. And now, I had to figure out how to move forward, how to rebuild my life without him. But even as I stood there, staring out into the night, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was still a chance for us. Maybe it was just a fleeting hope, a desperate wish that things could be fixed, but I didn't want to give up just yet. I didn't want to believe that everything was truly lost. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision ahead of me. I had to face him. I had to confront the truth, no matter how painful it was. But I also had to face myself. I had to come to terms with what I had done, with who I had become, and with the fact that I couldn't change the past. I grabbed my phone and sent him a message. "I'm ready. Let's talk." And with that, I set the phone down again, my heart pounding in my chest. The waiting was over. Now, all that was left was to face whatever came next. The following days passed in an agonizing blur. The weight of anticipation, mixed with dread, clouded every thought I had. I had reached out to him. I had sent the message, opening the door for the conversation we needed to have, but with every minute that passed without a response, I found myself doubting the decision. What had I expected from him? What was I even hoping for? Was I really prepared to face the consequences of my actions? Could I handle the truth? I had spent so much time running from my feelings, from the guilt that weighed on me like an anchor, and now it seemed inevitable that I would have to confront it all. The life I had once known, the life I had built with him, had been shattered, and there was no quick fix. There was no magic word that could undo the hurt I had caused. The truth was, I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to face the man I had betrayed. I wasn't ready to confront the hurt in his eyes, the anger, the disappointment. I wasn't ready to admit to myself just how far I had fallen, how much I had sacrificed for a moment of excitement, a brief escape from the monotony of life. But I knew deep down that this conversation had to happen. It had to happen for both of us. I sat at the kitchen table, my phone in front of me, unable to move. I had told myself that I wouldn't reach out again. I would wait for him. But as the silence stretched on, the uncertainty gnawed at me. What if he never came back? What if this was it? What if this was the end of everything? Just as I was about to give in to my own self-doubt, the phone buzzed. My heart skipped a beat as I saw his name appear on the screen. I picked it up immediately, my breath caught in my throat as I opened the message. "I'm on my way," it read. The simple words sent a jolt of electricity through my body. He was coming. We were finally going to talk. But as the reality set in, my stomach twisted. What would I say? Where would we go from here? Could we fix this? Or was this just the final conversation, the one where we said goodbye? I felt like I was suffocating in my own uncertainty, trapped in a cycle of regret and fear. I didn't know what I wanted from this conversation. I didn't know if I even wanted to try to fix things. Part of me wanted to hear him say he would forgive me, that we could start over, that we could rebuild. But another part of me feared that even if we did, we would never be the same. We couldn't go back. The past had already been destroyed. The doorbell rang, pulling me out of my spiraling thoughts. My heart pounded in my chest as I stood up, my legs weak beneath me. I wasn't sure if I was ready to face him, but I had no choice. I had to. He was here. This was the moment I had been both dreading and longing for. I opened the door slowly, my breath catching in my throat as I saw him standing there. He was wearing the same clothes he had worn when he left, the same tired expression on his face. But there was something different about him now. Something in his eyes that I couldn't quite place, something that spoke of hurt, of betrayal, of a pain I had caused. I felt a pang of guilt, of regret, but I didn't know how to express it. I didn't know if I had the right to. "Hi," I said quietly, my voice trembling despite my best efforts to sound calm. He didn't say anything at first. He just looked at me, his eyes searching my face, as if trying to read something that wasn't there. I stood there, unsure of what to do next. I wanted to say something, to explain myself, but the words felt stuck in my throat. "I don't know what to say," he said finally, his voice low. "I don't know if I can ever forgive you, but I'm here. We need to talk." The words hit me like a physical blow. I had expected this, but hearing him say it out loud made everything feel so much more real. The reality of what I had done, of what I had lost, was overwhelming. I could feel the tears welling up, but I held them back. I didn't deserve to cry. I had no right to. He stepped inside, and I moved aside to let him in. We stood there in the doorway for a moment, the silence between us thick with unspoken words. I didn't know what to do next. I didn't know where to begin. "I'm sorry," I whispered, my voice shaking. "I'm so sorry for what I've done." He didn't respond right away. Instead, he looked around the room, as if taking in everything that had changed since he left. Everything felt different now, distant, cold. I couldn't help but wonder if this was the last time we would ever be in this room together. "Do you even know why you did it?" he asked, his voice filled with quiet anger. "I still don't understand." "What were you looking for?" I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of his words. I had asked myself that question 1,000 times since it all began. What had I been looking for? Why had I allowed myself to fall into something I knew was wrong? But the truth was, I didn't have an answer. I hadn't known then, and I still didn't know now. "I don't know," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I was lost. I was looking for something. I don't even know what. I thought it would make me feel alive again. But I was wrong. I ruined everything. He closed his eyes for a moment, his hand rubbing his face as if trying to process everything I had just said. He took a deep breath before turning to face me again, his eyes still filled with pain. "I don't know if I can ever trust you again," he said quietly. "I don't know if we can ever go back to the way things were." His words hit me harder than anything else. I had known this moment would come. I had known that the trust we had built over the years had been shattered beyond repair. But hearing him say it, hearing him confirm what I already knew, felt like a blow to my chest. "I know," I whispered, my voice breaking. "I know. And I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve it. But I need you to know that I am so sorry. I regret everything. I wish I could take it all back, but I can't." He nodded slowly, his face expressionless. "I don't know what to do," he said quietly. "I don't know if I can even be in the same room with you right now, let alone rebuild what we had." I nodded, my throat tight with emotion. I knew I couldn't change his mind. I couldn't undo the damage I had caused. All I could do now was accept the consequences and face whatever came next. "I understand," I said softly. "I understand. And I'm sorry. For everything." We stood there for a long moment, neither of us saying anything. The silence was deafening, and I could feel the distance between us growing with each passing second. I didn't know where we went from here. I didn't know what would happen next. But I knew one thing for sure, we could never go back to the way things were.